When your 6-year-old looks you dead in the eye and says, "Mommy, Mr. Brennan does bad things when you're not looking," you want to believe she's confused. You want to believe children mix up reality and imagination. I convinced myself that's what was happening. I'm Carol May and I'm sitting in my car right now, parked outside a house at dusk. My hands are gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles have gone white. In the back seat, my daughter Sloane is clutching her stuffed triceratops, the one she's had since she was 2, and her eyes are wide with a kind of fear I've never seen before. Not the fear of monsters under the bed or thunderstorms. Real fear. The kind that makes your stomach turn because you know something is deeply, fundamentally wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because what I'm about to tell you, what I discovered that night, it didn't just shatter my world. It saved my child's life. Let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Carol May. I'm 32 years old and I work as a freelance graphic designer from my home in Millbrook, Connecticut. It's a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone, where the fall leaves actually look like they do in magazines, where you'd never think something evil could be hiding in plain sight. I'm a single mother. I've been divorced for 2 years now. My ex-husband Garrett, Sloane's father, he works overseas in Singapore. Software engineer married to his job, barely calls. Sloane doesn't really remember him being present even when he lived with us. The divorce wasn't dramatic. It was just sad. Like watching something slowly fade until there's nothing left to hold on to. So it's been just me and Sloane. My whole world narrowed down to balancing client deadlines, school pickups, bedtime stories, and trying desperately to give my daughter the stability I never had growing up. Our life had a rhythm to it. I'd work from my cozy home office, this little room with a window overlooking our backyard, while vintage records played in the background. Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald. Music that felt like comfort. Sloane is 6 years old, but she's got the vocabulary of someone twice her age. She's obsessed with dinosaurs, can pronounce Pachycephalosaurus without stumbling, and she loves her art class at school more than anything. Our small colonial house is covered in her drawings. The fridge, the hallway walls, my office door. Everywhere you look there's evidence of her imagination. Purple T-Rexes. Smiling stegosauruses wearing party hats. She was bubbly, talkative, always asking questions about everything. Was past tense. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. After the divorce I threw myself completely into being Sloane's mom. I didn't date. Didn't even think about it. My friends would suggest apps, blind dates, but I'd wave them off. I had Sloane. I had my work. That was enough. Except late at night after she was asleep, I'd sit in the living room with a glass of wine and feel the weight of loneliness pressing down on my chest. Not loneliness for Garrett, I didn't miss him. Loneliness for partnership. For another adult to share the burden and the joy of life with. For someone to look at me like I was more than just Sloane's mom. I told myself I was fine. I told myself Sloane needed stability more than I needed companionship. And for 2 years I believed it. Then 7 months ago everything changed. I met Brennan Cushing at a parent-teacher conference. Not Sloane's teacher, she's in 1st grade. But I'd brought along my design portfolio to show her teacher some work I'd done for the school's fundraiser, and I got turned around in the hallways of Millbrook Academy. That's when I literally bumped into him. Knocked a stack of papers right out of his hands. Brennan was 38, a high school history teacher at the academy. He also coached the JV soccer team. Tall, sandy-haired, with these wire-rimmed glasses that made him look both intellectual and approachable. When he smiled, it reached his eyes. That was the first thing I noticed. How genuine his smile seemed. He helped me pick up the papers I'd scattered and somehow we ended up talking. He saw my portfolio and started asking questions about my work. Not polite questions but real ones. He understood design principles. He quoted Steinbeck and Vonnegut, made jokes about how history teachers are basically just storytellers with better sources. Before I left that night he asked me to coffee. He was nervous about it, stumbled over his words, apologized for being forward, explained he normally wasn't this bold but something told him he'd regret it if he didn't ask. It was refreshingly honest. He told me right away that he'd had relationship failures in his past, that he wasn't perfect, but he'd been working on himself. I said yes. Our first date was at this little bookstore cafe downtown. We talked for 3 hours. He told me about growing up in the Midwest, about his love of teaching, about how seeing students understand historical connections made everything worthwhile. He asked about my design work, about Sloane, about what it was like being a single parent. He didn't make me feel like a package deal or a complication. He made me feel seen. The second date, he brought a book for Sloane, a kid's guide to the Revolutionary War with beautiful illustrations. When I brought it home to her, she spent the whole evening poring over it, asking me questions I couldn't answer about the Battle of Bunker Hill. The third date, he met Sloane. I was terrified. You have to understand, introducing your child to someone you're dating, that's not a casual thing. That's opening the door to your whole world and praying they don't damage it. But Brennan was patient. He got down on her level, asked her about her favorite dinosaur, listened intently when she launched into a 10-minute explanation of why velociraptors were actually much smaller than Jurassic Park portrayed. He didn't try too hard. He didn't perform. He was just there. Present. Kind. Over the next few months, Brennan became woven into our lives. Bookstore dates where he'd find obscure design books he thought I'd appreciate. Family dinners where he'd cook. He made this incredible chicken piccata, while Sloane and I set the table. Evenings where he'd read to Sloane at bedtime, doing funny voices for different historical figures, making her giggle until she got the hiccups. Everyone loved him. My mother, who'd been skeptical of me dating at all, kept saying, "Carol, don't let this one get away." My best friend Portia, who'd helped me through the divorce, pulled me aside one night and said, "I haven't seen you this happy in years." Even Sloane seemed charmed by him at first. Brennan brought her small, thoughtful gifts. A new dinosaur figurine for her collection. A set of watercolor pencils when she mentioned wanting to try a new art technique. Never anything over the top or excessive. Just perfect little gestures that showed he paid attention. He was patient when Sloane interrupted our dates, and she did constantly because that's what 6-year-olds do. He never once suggested getting a sitter so we could have alone time. He'd just smile and say, "She's part of the deal." The best part. He seemed perfect. Not Hollywood perfect, where everything is too smooth and polished and you know it can't be real. Real perfect. Flawed enough to be human. He left dishes in the sink. He got grumpy when his soccer team lost. He had a terrible sense of direction, but kind. Present. The kind of man I'd started to believe didn't actually exist. I remember this one evening about 4 months into our relationship. We were at his house, this modest colonial not unlike mine, and Brennan and Sloane were building a Lego castle together on his living room floor. I was sitting on the couch with a cup of tea just watching them. Brennan was explaining medieval architecture, making it fun and understandable for a 6-year-old. Sloane was laughing, handing him pieces, completely engaged. I thought to myself, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. A partner. A father figure for Sloane. Someone who makes our little family feel complete instead of broken. I felt hopeful for the first time in years. Like maybe the hard part was over. Like maybe I'd finally gotten it right. But there was something. Something so small I dismissed it at the time. I was watching them build that castle, smiling, feeling this warm contentment spreading through my chest. And then I looked at Sloane's face. Really looked at it. He was smiling. But the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was subtle. So subtle I told myself I was imagining it. She was probably just tired, or maybe she was concentrating on the Legos. Kids make weird faces when they're focused. But somewhere deep in my gut, in that place where mothers know things before they have proof, something whispered, "Pay attention." I ignored it. That moment right there. That was my first mistake. Because children, they know things. They feel things adults have trained themselves not to feel. They haven't learned yet how to ignore their instincts in favor of what they want to believe. And Sloane knew something I didn't. Something that would unravel everything I thought I'd built. Something that would turn my fairy tale into a nightmare. If you're watching this right now, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Because what happens next, the warning signs I missed and the truth I discovered, every parent needs to hear this story. Trust me on that. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling because the truth would have been too inconvenient? Too painful? Drop your answer in the comments. Because looking back now, I realize that's exactly what I was doing. I was so desperate for happiness, so desperate to give Sloane a complete family, that I silenced every whisper of doubt. I smoothed over every small inconsistency. I explained away every red flag. And that silence, that willingness to ignore what my daughter was trying to tell me, almost cost us everything. 3 weeks ago, everything started falling apart. I just didn't recognize it yet. It was a Tuesday night around 2 in the morning. I was deep asleep when I heard it. This blood-curdling scream that shot me out of bed like someone had fired a gun. My heart was already racing before my feet hit the floor. I ran down the hallway to Sloane's room, nearly tripping over her toy dinosaurs in the dark. When I burst through her door, she was sitting straight up in bed, her little body rigid, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes were open but unfocused, like she was still half in whatever nightmare had gripped her. I rushed to her side, pulled her into my arms. Baby, it's okay. Mommy's here. You're safe. It was just a bad dream. She was shaking. Not the normal post-nightmare trembling. This was different. Deeper. Like something had genuinely terrified her down to her bones. I held her, rocked her, smoothed her hair back from her sweaty forehead. Asked her what the dream was about. She wouldn't tell me. Just kept crying, clinging to me like she was drowning and I was the only thing keeping her afloat. I stayed with her until she fell back asleep, which took over an hour. Then I went back to my own bed, exhausted, telling myself it was just a one-off. Kids have nightmares. It's normal. Part of development. Except it wasn't a one-off. The next night, same thing. 2:30 in the morning, piercing scream, me running down the hallway. Sloane sitting up, terrified, crying, refusing to tell me what she'd dreamed about. Third night again. 1:45 this time. By the fourth day I was running on maybe 10 hours of sleep total. My eyes felt like sandpaper. I had client deadlines piling up, a logo redesign due Friday, a website mock-up that needed revisions, and I couldn't focus because I was so worried about Sloane. But it wasn't just the nightmares. That was only the beginning. Sloane became clingy in a way she hadn't been since she was a toddler. She wouldn't let me out of her sight. If I went to the kitchen to make coffee, she followed me. If I went to the bathroom, she stood outside the door talking to me through it. When I tried to work in my office, she dragged her coloring books in and sat at my feet, unusually quiet. Getting her to school became a battle. Every single morning she'd beg to stay home. She'd complain of stomachaches, headaches, feeling dizzy. I'd check her temperature, normal. Ask her specific questions about where it hurt. She'd give vague answers. I knew she was making excuses, but I didn't know why. I was caught between concern and frustration. Concern because my normally bubbly, talkative daughter had become this withdrawn, anxious shadow of herself. Frustration because I had work to do, bills to pay, and a 6-year-old who suddenly refused to cooperate with our basic daily routine. I started wondering if this was about Brennan. If maybe she was acting out because she was jealous of the time I spent with him. If she was testing me to see if I'd choose her over him. Single mother guilt is a powerful thing. It makes you second-guess every decision, every moment you spend on yourself instead of your child. Then about a week into this nightmare phase, I got a call from Mrs. Holloway, Sloane's first-grade teacher. It was mid-afternoon, I was deep in a design project, and when her name popped up on my phone, my stomach immediately dropped. Teachers don't call in the middle of the day unless something's wrong. Hi, Carol, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. No, it's fine. Is Sloane okay? There was a pause. Physically, she's fine. But I wanted to touch base with you about some behavioral changes I've noticed. Sloane's been unusually withdrawn the past week or so. She's not participating in group activities, which isn't like her at all. During free play, she just sits by herself. And yesterday during art class, which you know is usually her favorite, she barely touched her project. My chest tightened. Has she said anything? About what might be bothering her? I've tried talking to her, but she won't open up. She just says she's tired. I wanted to check in with you. Is everything okay at home? Any changes or stresses that might be affecting her? I wanted to be honest. I wanted to say, actually, she's been having terrible nightmares and won't tell me what they're about. And she's become so clingy I can barely function and I don't know what's wrong. But instead I found myself minimizing it. She's been going through a little phase. Some nightmares, probably just overtired. You know how kids are, they go through these patches. I'm sure it'll pass. Of course. But if it continues or if you notice anything concerning, please let me know. We're here to support Sloane however we can. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my computer screen, not seeing it. Something was wrong with my daughter. Really wrong. And I was standing at a crossroads. I could dig deeper, push harder to find out what was happening, or I could wait it out, hope it resolved itself. I told myself I'd wait another week. See if things improved. They didn't. 2 weeks ago, this would be about a week after the nightmares started, Brennan invited us over for Sunday brunch. He'd been so understanding about me being stressed and sleep-deprived. He'd sent sweet text messages, offered to bring us dinner, suggested this brunch as a way to help me relax. "I'll make pancakes," he texted. "The good kind from scratch. You and Sloane can sleep in, come over whenever you're ready. No pressure." Sloane loved pancakes. She loved Brennan's big backyard where she could run around. Usually she'd be excited about going to his house. But when I told her about the plan, her whole face changed. "I don't want to go to Mr. Brennan's house anymore." I was standing at the kitchen counter, pouring myself a desperately needed second cup of coffee. I turned to look at her. She was sitting at the table, pushing her cereal around with her spoon, not eating it. "Why not, sweetie? You love Mr. Brennan's house. He has that big backyard, and remember last time you found those cool rocks?" "I just don't want to." Her voice was quiet but firm. Stubborn. I felt my patience starting to fray. I was exhausted. I'd been dealing with nightmares and clinginess and work stress, and now my daughter was being difficult about the one nice thing I had planned for the weekend. "Sloane, Mr. Brennan is making pancakes especially for you. He's been looking forward to this." "I don't care. I don't want to go." I tried a different approach. Sat down at the table with her, used my gentle parenting voice. "Did something happen at Mr. Brennan's house? Did you break something? Because if you did, it's okay. We can tell him. He won't be mad." She shook her head, wouldn't meet my eyes. "Then what is it? Help me understand." "I just don't want to go there anymore." I tried for another 10 minutes to coax an explanation out of her. I asked if she and Brennan had gotten into a disagreement. If she'd heard him and me arguing. We hadn't, but I was grasping at straws. He was feeling sick. She was worried about something at school. She shut down completely. Just stared at her cereal, lips pressed into a thin line, silent. And here's where I failed her. I was stressed, I was tired, and instead of recognizing that my daughter's refusal was a warning sign, I saw it as behavioral problem. I thought she was being manipulative, testing boundaries, maybe even punishing me for spending time with Brennan. "Sloane, this isn't okay. Mr. Brennan has been so kind to us. He's been patient with you, he brings you gifts, he spends time with you. We're going to brunch and I expect you to be polite." The look she gave me, I'll never forget it. It was betrayal and resignation mixed together. Like she tried to tell me something important and I'd refused to hear it. We went to brunch. It was one of the most uncomfortable 2 hours of my life. Sloane barely ate. She made these beautiful pancakes, fluffy, perfectly golden with fresh blueberries, into tiny pieces with her fork, but didn't put a single bite in her mouth. She stayed glued to my side the entire time, even when Brennan suggested she go play in the backyard. And whenever Brennan got close to her, to ruffle her hair, to show her something, just normal friendly interactions, she'd flinch. Not dramatically, but I noticed. A tiny pulling away, a stiffening of her shoulders. Brennan noticed too. "Is she feeling all right?" he asked quietly while Sloane was in the bathroom. I felt embarrassed. Like my daughter's behavior was reflecting badly on me as a parent. "I think she's just tired. She's been having nightmares." Poor kid. His voice was so sympathetic, so concerned. My niece went through that phase around the same age. Night terrors, they called them. It passes eventually. See how good he was. How normal he seemed. He had an explanation for everything. A reasonable answer. A personal anecdote that made his response feel genuine and caring. We left early. I made up an excuse about Sloane needing a nap. In the car on the way home I tried again. "Sloane, you were very rude to Mr. Brennan today. He made us a lovely brunch and you barely said thank you." She stared out the window, silent. "If something's bothering you, you need to use your words. You're not a baby anymore." Still nothing. That night, the nightmares came back with a vengeance. 3:15 in the morning, her screams woke me from a dead sleep. The pattern continued for another week. Nightmares, clinginess, withdrawal. I was at my wit's end. My work was suffering. I'd missed one deadline already and was barely keeping up with revisions. My mother kept calling, asking if everything was okay, saying Sloane sounded off when they talked on the phone. Then came last Tuesday. The day everything came crashing down. I had a client presentation scheduled at a downtown coffee shop for 5 p.m. It was a big client. A potential long-term contract that would mean stable income for months. And I couldn't miss it. Sloane had after-school art club until 4:30. My mother usually picked her up on Tuesdays, But that day she had a doctor's appointment. I'm so sorry, honey. Can you reschedule? I couldn't. I'd already rescheduled once because of Sloane's issues. That's when Brennan texted, "Hey, I know you have that big presentation today. Want me to grab Sloane from art club? My last class ends at 3:30. He can hang out at my place until you're done. I'll order pizza." It seemed like the perfect solution. I texted back immediately, "Are you sure? That would be amazing." "Of course. You're stressed enough. Let me help." I felt such relief. Such gratitude. This wonderful man taking care of my daughter so I could work. Supporting me. Being a partner. That morning at breakfast I told Sloane the plan as casually as I could. "So today after art club, Mr. Brennan is going to pick you up and you'll hang out at his house for a couple hours while I'm at my meeting. Won't that be fun?" He's ordering pizza. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Sloane's face went white. Her whole body started shaking. The cereal bowl she was holding slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor, milk and cereal exploding across the kitchen tiles. "No." He started screaming. Not crying, screaming. A sound of pure panic. "No. No. I don't want to go with Mr. Brennan. Please, Mommy, please don't make me." She was hyperventilating, her breath coming in short gasps. Tears poured down her face. She ran to me, grabbed my legs, her fingers digging in so hard they left marks. "Please, please, please don't leave me with him. Please, Mommy. I'll be good. I'll be so good. Just please don't make me go." I'd never seen her like this. Never. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't manipulation. This was primal animal fear. The kind of terror you see in prey animals when they know a predator is close. My heart was pounding. I knelt down, tried to hold her, but she was thrashing, incoherent. "Sloane, baby, you have to breathe. Slow breaths. Come on, breathe with Mommy." It took 15 minutes to calm her down enough that she could speak. By that time I'd already texted my client to reschedule. There was no way I was leaving Sloane in this state. Once she'd exhausted herself, her sobs had turned to hiccups, her body limp with emotional fatigue, I carried her to the couch. Held her. Waited until her breathing was almost normal. "Sloane." My voice was gentle but firm. "Baby, you have to tell me what's wrong. Did Mr. Brennan do something that upset you?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice so tiny I almost didn't hear it, "Mommy, Mr. Brennan does bad things when you're not looking." Everything stopped. The air in the room felt thick, hard to breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What kind of bad things? She wouldn't look at me. Just stared at her lap, picking at a thread on her shirt. "Sloane, this is important. What kind of bad things?" "Bad things." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Secret things." He said I can't tell. My blood ran cold. "Secret things? What secret things?" But she was shutting down. I could see it happening, her face going blank, her body curling in on itself. "Sweetheart, listen to me." I tilted her chin up so she had to look at me. "You can tell me anything. Anything at all. Secrets that make you scared aren't good secrets. Those are the kinds of secrets you're supposed to tell Mommy." She started crying again. Not the hysterical screaming from before, but quiet, hopeless tears. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and wounded. "I can't." He said I can't tell. He said no one would believe me anyway because everyone loves him. I felt like the floor had opened up beneath me. "He said that. Mr. Brennan said that to you." She nodded just barely. When did he say that?" But she wouldn't answer. She just kept crying, and eventually she cried herself to sleep right there on the couch, emotionally exhausted. I sat there holding her for I don't know how long. An hour? 2. My mind was racing, spinning, trying to make sense of what she'd said. "Mr. Brennan does bad things when you're not looking. Secret things. He said I can't tell." What did that mean? What had he done? Had he yelled at her when I wasn't there? Been impatient? Said something inappropriate? Or was it something worse? Something so much worse that my brain couldn't even let me think it? Part of me wanted to call Brennan immediately. Confront him. Demand to know what the hell he'd done to make my daughter this terrified. But another part of me, the part that had been socialized to be polite, to avoid conflict, to not make accusations without proof, that part hesitated. What if I was misunderstanding? What if Sloane had misinterpreted something innocent? What if I accused a good man of something terrible based on a 6-year-old's cryptic statement? But then I looked at my daughter's face, tear-stained and peaceful only in sleep, and I thought, what if I'm wrong to hesitate? What if something really did happen and I'm wasting time worrying about being polite? That night, after I put Sloane to bed, in my bed because she refused to sleep in her own room, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't stop. Secret things. Bad things. He said no one would believe me. Those are the words predators use. I knew that. I'd read articles, listened to podcasts about child safety. Those are the exact words abusers use to keep children silent. But this was Brennan. Brennan who taught history to teenagers. Brennan who coached soccer. Brennan who everyone loved. Brennan who'd been so patient and kind and present with both of us. It couldn't be. There had to be another explanation. Except, what explanation could there be for a child that terrified? I didn't sleep at all that night. Just lay there in the dark, listening to Sloane's breathing, feeling the weight of a decision I wasn't ready to make. Because once you open that door, once you start questioning whether someone you trust might be a monster, you can't close it again. Once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. Once you start looking for patterns, you find them everywhere. And I was starting to see patterns I'd been blind to before. If you're still watching, I need you to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what I'm about to tell you in the next part, the investigation I started, the things I discovered, every single parent needs to hear this. The warning signs I missed are the same ones you might be missing right now. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where a child tried to tell you something important, but you dismissed it because it seemed impossible? Maybe it was your own kid or a niece or nephew or a student. Think about it. Drop your answer in the comments because I need you to understand, we all need to understand, that children tell us the truth. We just have to be willing to hear it, even when that truth is terrifying. Especially when that truth is terrifying. Because that night, lying awake in the dark with my daughter finally sleeping peacefully beside me, I made a decision. I didn't know yet what I was looking for. I didn't have proof of anything. But my daughter had tried to warn me and I was done ignoring that warning. I was going to find out exactly who Brennan Cushing really was. And what I discovered would change everything. The morning after Sloane's meltdown, I woke up with a decision already made. I hadn't slept, not really, just drifted in and out of anxious half-consciousness while my daughter slept curled against me. But somewhere in those dark hours I'd reached a conclusion. I needed help. Professional help. Someone who could tell me if I was overreacting or if my worst fears were justified. I called Portia. Portia's been my best friend since college. She's also a child psychologist who specializes in trauma. If anyone could help me make sense of what was happening with Sloane, it was her. I texted her at 6 in the morning, emergency. Can you meet me for coffee today? She responded within minutes, 10 a.m. The usual place. You okay? I wasn't okay. But I texted back, just need to talk. I dropped Sloane at school. Another fight, another round of her begging to stay home, and drove to our favorite coffee shop downtown. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I kept thinking about what I was going to say. How do you tell someone that you think your boyfriend might have done something to your daughter, but you don't know what, and you're terrified of being wrong but more terrified of being right? Portia was already there when I arrived, sitting at our usual corner table with 2 lattes waiting. She took one look at my face and her expression shifted from friendly to professional concern. What happened? I sat down and everything just poured out. The nightmares that started 3 weeks ago. Sloane's sudden clinginess. Her refusal to go to Brennan's house. The panic attack when I tried to have him pick her up from school. And finally, the words that had kept me awake all night. Mommy, Mr. Brennan does bad things when you're not looking. Secret things. He said I can't tell. Portia listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with every detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, processing. Carol, I need you to hear what I'm about to say. Her voice was gentle but firm, her therapist voice. Children Sloane's age don't usually fabricate specific discomfort with adults. They might exaggerate situations they don't fully understand. They might misinterpret innocent interactions. But that level of fear you're describing? That's real. That's a trauma response. Something happened. I felt my chest tighten. But Portia, Brennan's been nothing but appropriate. I've watched him with her. He's never been inappropriate, never said anything weird. He's never even been alone with her for more than a few minutes. Has he asked to be alone with her? The question stopped me cold. I sat there with my coffee halfway to my lips, thinking back. Actually, yes. Multiple times. He's offered to take her to the park while I work. To pick her up from school when I'm running late. To watch her when I have client meetings. Now that I think about it, he's offered a lot. And you always said no? I always said no. I thought I was being cautious. Maybe even a little paranoid because of the divorce, because I didn't want her getting too attached too quickly. But now you're wondering if your instincts were trying to tell you something. I nodded, feeling tears prick my eyes. Portia, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm reading into this because I'm stressed and sleep deprived? What if Sloane is just acting out because she has attachment issues from the divorce? Portia reached across the table, put her hand on mine. Listen to me. Trust your daughter. Trust your gut. You need to figure out what happened. And Carol? If a man is telling a 6-year-old to keep secrets from her mother, if he's saying no one would believe you anyway, those are textbook grooming behaviors. Those are the exact words predators use. The word hit me like a physical blow. Predator. We were talking about Brennan. Sweet, patient, book-quoting Brennan who made pancakes from scratch and did funny voices when reading bedtime stories. I can't believe this is happening, I whispered. I know. But you need to investigate. Carefully. Don't confront him yet. Not until you have more information. Watch. Look for patterns. I left that coffee shop feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Part of me wanted to run straight to Brennan and demand answers. Part of me wanted to pretend this conversation never happened, go back to my comfortable life where the man I was dating was exactly who he appeared to be. But I couldn't. Because Sloane had tried to warn me and I'd almost ignored it. That afternoon I called my mother. Maybe I was still looking for permission to dismiss my concerns. Maybe I wanted someone to tell me I was overreacting. Mom, can I ask you something? About Sloane. Of course, honey. Is she still having those nightmares? Yeah. And she's been acting strange about Brennan. Refusing to go to his house, having panic attacks when I suggest he watch her. She said he does bad things when I'm not looking. There was a pause. Then, sweetheart, children can be manipulative. Especially at that age. Maybe she just doesn't want to share you. She had you all to herself for 2 years after the divorce. Now there's this man taking up your attention. You think she's jealous? It's possible, isn't it? And Carol, I know the divorce was hard on her. Garrett was never emotionally present even when he lived with you. Sloane has attachment issues. This might just be her way of testing whether you'll choose her or Brennan. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe that so badly. It was the easier explanation. The one that didn't require me to face the possibility that I'd brought a monster into our lives. But Portia's words kept echoing. That level of fear is real. Something happened. I was torn. Caught between wanting to defend Brennan, this man I'd been building a relationship with, planning a future with, and needing to protect my daughter. The two things felt mutually exclusive and I couldn't figure out how to reconcile them. So I decided to watch. To pay attention. To look for the things I might have missed. And once I started looking, I saw them everywhere. That evening, Brennan came over for dinner. I'd invited him because I wanted to observe him with fresh eyes. See if my suspicions had any foundation or if I really was just projecting anxiety onto an innocent man. His phone rang during dinner. He glanced at the screen and something flickered across his face. Annoyance? Worry? Before he smiled and said, "Sorry, work call. I'll be right back." He stepped out onto the back porch to take it. I realized I'd never seen him answer his phone in front of me. He always stepped away. Always took calls in private. When he came back inside, I asked casually, "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just the principal about some scheduling stuff for next semester." But it was 7:30 on a Wednesday night. Why would the principal be calling about scheduling at this hour? I started noticing other things. His phone was always face down on tables. Always. When it buzzed with texts, he'd glance at it but never let me see the screen. He'd get messages late at night. I noticed because he'd stayed over a few times, and I'd hear his phone vibrating on the nightstand at 11 p.m. midnight, even later. One night I asked him about it. "You're popular. Who's texting you this late?" He barely looked up from his book. "Probably just group chats with other teachers. We coordinate a lot for the soccer team." Maybe that was true. But something about the way he said it, so casual, so rehearsed, made me uneasy. I started asking more questions about his past. Nothing aggressive, just curious girlfriend questions that should have been normal. Tell me about your last serious relationship. You've been kind of vague about your dating history. Nothing serious really. I've been focused on my career. Building stability before bringing someone into my life. He smiled at me. I'm glad I waited. You're worth it. It should have been sweet. But it felt like deflection. What about your family? You never talk about them. My parents passed away a few years ago. Car accident. I'm an only child, no close relatives. It's just me. The way he said it, the exact same phrasing every time I asked, it felt rehearsed. Like he'd practiced this story until it sounded natural. I'm so sorry. That must have been devastating. It was. But I've made peace with it. Then he changed the subject, asked about my work, my day, steering the conversation away from himself. I also noticed he had no social media presence. None. No Facebook, no Instagram, nothing. When I'd asked about it early in our relationship, he'd said, I'm a private person. Social media is toxic. I'd rather live my life than document it. At the time I'd found it refreshing. Now it felt suspicious. Who has absolutely no online presence in this day and age? But the thing that really set off alarm bells, the thing that made my stomach drop and my hands shake, was what I found on Sloane's tablet. She'd left it on the couch one afternoon. I picked it up to plug it in to charge and I saw she had messages. I don't normally read her messages. She's 6, she mostly texts my mother and my sister about nothing important. But something made me look. There were messages from Brennan. From about a month ago. They started innocuous enough. Hey Sloane. What's your favorite dinosaur? Triceratops. They have 3 horns and they're really strong. Cool. Want to see a video about the Revolutionary War? It has animations you'd like. Yes, please. I scrolled further. More messages like this. Friendly. Appropriate on the surface. Him asking about her interests, her asking questions about history, about his day. Then I saw it. Hey, let's delete these messages, okay? It'll be a surprise for your mom. Why? We're planning something special for her. But it's a secret. Secrets are fun, right? Okay. The messages stopped there. Everything after that date was deleted. I sat there staring at the screen, my blood running cold. He'd asked my 6-year-old daughter to delete their messages. He'd framed it as planning a surprise for me. But my birthday wasn't for 4 months. What could they possibly be planning? Unless it wasn't about planning anything at all. Unless it was about teaching her to keep secrets. Testing whether she'd hide things from me. Grooming her. That word again. Grooming. I waited until that evening when I was putting Sloane to bed. I kept my voice gentle, non-accusatory. Baby, I saw some old messages between you and Mr. Brennan on your tablet. Why did he ask you to delete them? Her whole body tensed. He said we were planning a surprise birthday present for you. But sweetie, my birthday isn't until April. That's months away. She looked confused. I don't know. He said it was a secret surprise. Did he ask you to delete any other messages? She nodded slowly. Sometimes. He said secrets between friends are special. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Sloane, did Mr. Brennan ever show you things on his phone? Videos or pictures? Her face changed, became guarded, fearful. She looked away. You won't get in trouble, I promise. I just need to know. He showed me pictures of kids playing games. He asked if I wanted to play too. What kind of games? But she shut down completely. Shook her head. Wouldn't say more. I held her until she fell asleep, my mind racing. Brennan had been grooming my daughter. Testing boundaries. Teaching her to keep secrets. Showing her pictures of other children. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't acting out. This was real. The next day I did something I'm not proud of, but I had to know. I drove to Millbrook Academy in the middle of the afternoon. I told myself I was just dropping off lunch for Brennan. I'd texted him earlier saying I'd made extra sandwiches. But really I wanted to see his workplace. Talk to his colleagues. Get a sense of who he was when I wasn't around. I found him in the teacher's lounge chatting with another history teacher, Granger Kimball, a friendly guy in his 50s who I'd met once at a school function. Carol. What a nice surprise. Brennan seemed genuinely happy to see me. I made extra lunch, thought I'd bring you some. We chatted for a few minutes, then Brennan said he had to prep for his next class. After he left, I lingered, making small talk with Granger. "Brennan's such a dedicated teacher," I said casually. "Always volunteering for extra stuff." "Oh yeah, he's great. Field trips, after-school tutoring, weekend soccer tournaments. The guy never says no." Granger poured himself coffee. "Actually, I told the principal just last week that we should rotate who chaperones the overnight trips. Brennan's been on every single one for 3 years. 3 years. Guy needs a break." My heart was pounding. He really loves working with kids. He does. Granger hesitated, then added, "Though between you and me, I think he's a little too friendly sometimes. Not inappropriate, just, I don't know. Heard him telling one of the 8th graders last month that he could come over to his house to talk anytime, if he was struggling with anything. Just thought it was odd phrasing, you know? We're supposed to keep professional boundaries." I forced myself to smile, to nod, to act like this was just gossip and not confirmation of my worst fears. "I'm sure he just meant it in a supportive way. Oh, I'm sure. Brennan's a good guy. Just one of those things." I left the school feeling nauseous. Brennan had been on every overnight school trip for 3 years. He was inviting students to his house. He was crossing professional boundaries that other teachers noticed. When I got home, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I sat down at my computer and searched, "Brennan Cushing teacher." At first, nothing but his staff bio from Millbrook Academy. His credentials, his education, his coaching experience. Then I added Iowa to the search, because I vaguely remembered him mentioning he taught there before Connecticut. That's when I found it. An article from 5 years ago. Local news site in Des Moines. Local teacher under investigation for inappropriate contact with student. Case closed due to lack of evidence. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely click the link. The article was short. A history teacher at a middle school, Brennan Cushing, age 33 at the time, had been accused by a student's family of inappropriate contact. The details were vague, probably for legal reasons. The investigation found insufficient evidence. The family moved out of state and dropped the allegations. But there was a photo. It was him. Slightly younger, maybe 20 pounds lighter, but definitely him. Same sandy hair, same wire-rimmed glasses, same warm smile that had made me trust him. I read the article 3 times, my vision blurring. Insufficient evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means they couldn't prove it. And the family moved away, maybe because they were so traumatized they couldn't stay. Maybe because the investigation itself was too painful. Brennan had been accused before. He'd been investigated. And then he'd moved to Connecticut, started fresh at a new school, built a new reputation and found a single mother with a vulnerable 6-year-old daughter. He'd found us. I sat at my computer for I don't know how long just staring at that article. Thinking about all the warning signs I'd missed. All the red flags I'd explained away because I wanted so badly to believe I'd found a good man. Because everyone loved him. Because he seemed so perfect. But predators don't look like monsters. They look like teachers and coaches and boyfriends. They look trustworthy because that's how they survive. That's how they hunt. And I'd brought one into my home. Into my daughter's life. Sloane had tried to warn me. She'd had nightmares. She'd become clingy. She'd refused to go to his house. She'd had a complete panic attack at the thought of being alone with him. She told me in the only words her 6-year-old vocabulary could manage, "Mr. Brennan does bad things when you're not looking." And I'd almost not believed her. I'd almost chosen him over her. I'd almost dismissed her terror as jealousy or manipulation. The guilt hit me like a physical wave. I put my head in my hands and cried, really cried, for the first time since this nightmare started. But I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Because crying wouldn't protect Sloane. Crying wouldn't stop Brennan from hurting other children. I needed proof. Real, concrete proof that I could take to the police. And I needed to catch him in the act. Before I continue, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next? The trap I set, what I discovered the moment everything exploded, you need to see this through to the end. And I need to know that people are hearing this story. That other parents are learning to recognize these signs. Let me ask you. If you discovered someone you trusted had a hidden past, an accusation that was never proven, would you give them the benefit of the doubt or would you trust your instincts? Really think about it. Because that's the choice I was facing. Drop your answer in the comments. I stared at that article for another 10 minutes, memorizing every word. Then I closed my laptop and made a decision. I was going to find out exactly who Brennan Cushing was. And if my worst fears were true, if he was what I thought he was, I was going to make sure he never hurt another child again. Even if it meant destroying the life I thought we were building. Even if it meant facing the fact that I'd been so catastrophically wrong about someone I trusted. Because my daughter had tried to warn me. And this time I was going to listen. Carol knew what she had to do even though every nerve in her body screamed against it. She needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. Because she remembered what happened in Iowa. How the investigation went nowhere, how parents rallied around their beloved coach, how the whole thing just evaporated. She couldn't let that happen again. Not with Sloane. Not with any child. So she made a decision that would change everything. She would catch him in the act. But safely. He had to be smart about this. Friday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn chill that makes you pull your jacket a little tighter. Brennan called that afternoon, his voice warm and inviting through the phone. "Hey Carol, I was thinking, why don't you and Sloane come over for dinner tonight? I'm making my famous lasagna." Carol felt her stomach turn, but she kept her voice steady. "Oh, that's really sweet of you, but Sloane's not feeling well. She's been having a rough day." There was a pause on the other end. Then Brennan's voice, dripping with concern. "Poor thing. Is she okay? Should I come over?" No, Carol said quickly, maybe too quickly. "She just needs rest. But actually, I could come over after I put her to bed. We need to talk anyway." She could hear the shift in his tone, curiosity mixed with something else. "Everything okay?" Carol forced a lightness into her voice that felt like swallowing glass. "Yeah, of course. Just want to discuss the holidays. My mom keeps asking about plans and I figured we should coordinate, since we're..." She let the sentence trail off meaningfully. Brennan seemed pleased. "Perfect. Come around 8. I'll have coffee ready." After she hung up, Carol sat in her car for a full minute just breathing. Then she called Portia, her neighbor, the one person she trusted completely. "I need you to watch Sloane tonight. Please. I can't explain everything right now, but it's important." Before leaving that evening, Carol went into Sloane's room. Her daughter was curled up on her bed, clutching Mr. Whiskers, looking so small and fragile it made Carol's heart crack. She sat down beside her, pulled her close and held her tight. "Baby," Carol whispered, "I believe you. Do you hear me? I believe every word you told me. And I'm going to make sure Mr. Brennan never ever scares you again." Sloane looked up at her with those big tear-filled eyes. "Be careful, Mommy." That simple warning from her 7-year-old daughter nearly undid her. At 7:45 p.m., Carol's Honda Accord turned onto Brennan Street. She was early. Deliberately early. She parked 3 houses down, killing the engine and sitting in the growing darkness. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together in her lap. Brennan's house was a modest colonial, cream-colored with hunter green shutters and a detached garage. The kind of house that looked safe, normal, trustworthy. Isn't that always how it goes? The monsters don't live in haunted mansions. They live in houses with welcome mats and seasonal wreaths on the door. The porch light was on, casting a warm yellow glow. But it was the other light that caught Carol's attention, the one coming from the basement windows. Brennan had mentioned his home office was down there, where he graded papers and prepared lesson plans. Where he spent so much time alone. Carol's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every instinct she had was screaming at her. "Turn back. Call the police. Let someone else handle this. What if you're wrong? What if you're about to ruin an innocent man's life over a child's confusion or misunderstanding?" But then she remembered Sloane's face when she said those words. "He does bad things when you're not looking, Mommy." And before I continue with what Carol discovered in that basement, I need you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Because what happens next is something every parent needs to hear. Carol got out of her car, the autumn wind biting at her cheeks. Dead leaves skittered across the pavement, making scratching sounds that seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet neighborhood. She walked toward the house, her legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. As she approached the side of the house, moving toward those basement windows, she heard something that made her freeze completely. Voices. Brennan's voice, low and smooth, and another voice. Younger. Male. Her stomach dropped like a stone. Brennan had said he'd be alone. She crouched low, moving carefully toward the window. The blinds were half open, careless or maybe arrogant. She positioned herself where she could see inside without being seen, her breath coming in short, silent gasps. And there, through that basement window, she saw something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Brennan was sitting at his desk, the one with the computer and the soccer trophies lined up like little golden soldiers. But he wasn't alone. Next to him sat Tyler Wexford, a 13-year-old boy from the JV soccer team. Carol recognized him. She'd seen him at practices, a quiet kid with sandy hair who always seemed a little too eager to please. They were looking at a laptop together, the screen angled just enough that Carol couldn't see what was on it. But she could see Tyler's face. And that's what made her blood run cold. The boy's shoulders were hunched, defensive. He was fidgeting with his hands, fingers twisting together nervously. He kept glancing at the basement door like he was calculating his escape route. This wasn't the body language of a kid hanging out with a trusted coach. This was the body language of prey. Brennan's hand rested on Tyler's shoulder. His thumb was rubbing small circles there. Intimate, possessive, too familiar. Then Brennan leaned in closer, said something Carol couldn't hear, and laughed. That same warm, friendly laugh she'd heard 100 times. Tyler didn't laugh. He just nodded stiffly, his jaw tight. Then Brennan stood up. Carol watched him walk to the basement door, the same door Tyler kept looking at, and turn the lock. The sound seemed to echo in Carol's imagination even though she couldn't actually hear it from outside. Her entire body went ice cold. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees in an instant. Brennan returned to his chair, pulling it even closer to Tyler. Too close. Invasively close. The kind of close that makes you uncomfortable even when you're just watching it happen. Carol could see the boy's face clearly now, illuminated by the glow of the laptop screen. Fear. Confusion. And something worse, resignation. That terrible acceptance that something bad was about to happen and there was nothing he could do to stop it. It was the exact same expression Sloane had worn when she tried to explain what scared her about Brennan. The same look of a child who'd learned that adults don't always protect you. Sometimes they're the ones you need protection from. Brennan's hand moved from Tyler's shoulder, sliding slowly down his back. Tyler flinched. A full-body flinch that was unmistakable even through the window. Brennan leaned in and whispered something directly in the boy's ear. Carol couldn't see the laptop screen. She couldn't hear what Brennan was saying. But she didn't need to. He saw enough. The locked door. The invasion of personal space. The boy's body practically screaming his discomfort. The predatory intimacy of it all. And then the flashbacks hit her like a series of punches to the gut. Brennan offering to pick up Sloane alone. I'm heading that way anyway. The deleted text messages that Sloane mentioned. He told me not to tell you about our talks. His eagerness to be around children, always volunteering, always available. The Iowa article. Allegations that went nowhere. Sloane's terror. He does bad things when you're not looking. Everything clicked into place with horrible, crystal clarity. Sloane must have seen something similar. Maybe Brennan showing her something on his phone, testing her boundaries, grooming her for the next step. That's what predators do. They groom. They gradually normalize the abnormal until a child doesn't even know what to call what's happening to them. Carol looked at Tyler, trapped in that basement with the door locked, and she thought about her daughter. She thought about how many other children there might be. How many had already been hurt? How many would be hurt if she didn't do something right now? Rage and horror flooded through her in equal measure. Two tidal waves crashing together. Her vision tunneled. Her hands clenched into fists. And in that moment, crouching outside that basement window in the autumn darkness, Carol Brennan transformed from a woman desperately hoping she was wrong into a mother who knew with absolute certainty that she was right. Here's my question for you. What would you do in Carol's position right now? Would you call the police immediately, or would you find a way to get Tyler out of that basement yourself? Let me know in the comments. The trap was sprung. But not the way Brennan had planned. Carol's hands were shaking so violently she nearly dropped her phone. She fumbled with it in the darkness, her fingers feeling numb and clumsy as she pulled up Portia's number. When she spoke, her voice came out barely above a whisper, terror and adrenaline making it almost impossible to form words. Portia, listen to me very carefully. Call 911. Right now. Give them this address, 47 Elmwood Drive. Tell them possible child endangerment in progress. Tell them to come quietly, no sirens until they're close. There's a boy in the basement. There's a child in danger. Portia's voice came through panicked and high-pitched. Carol, what's happening? Don't go in there. Whatever you're thinking, don't do it. Wait for the police. Carol looked back at that basement window, at Tyler's face, at Brennan's hand moving places it should never be. He's in there with that child right now, Portia. Right now. I can't wait. I won't wait. She hung up. Took 3 deep breaths that did absolutely nothing to steady her nerves. And then she walked toward the front door. It was unlocked. Of course it was unlocked. That was part of Brennan's whole persona, wasn't it? Welcoming. Trustworthy. Nothing to hide. The door to his life was always open, because what kind of monster would leave their door unlocked? The kind who knows no one suspects him. Carol moved through the house like she was walking through a dream. The kitchen still smelled like the dinner he'd been preparing, garlic and tomato sauce, homey and warm. The living room had his bookshelves filled with classic literature and biographies. Framed teaching awards on the walls. Teacher of the Year 2019. Coach of the Season 2021. All these little monuments to what a good man he was. She reached the basement door. Locked from the inside. Carol didn't hesitate. She pounded on that door with both fists, hard enough to make her hands sting. Brennan. Open this door right now. Silence. 3 seconds of absolute silence that felt like 3 hours. Then scrambling sounds. A chair scraping across the floor. Panicked movement. Brennan's voice came through the door, trying so hard to sound casual, but she could hear the strain underneath. Carol? Hey. You're early. Just finishing up some tutoring with Tyler here. History project on the Civil War. Give me 1 second to wrap things up. Open this door. Carol's voice didn't sound like her own. It was steel and ice and fury. Open it now. Or I'm breaking it down and the police are already on their way. A longer pause this time. She could almost hear him thinking, calculating, trying to figure out his next move. Then the lock clicked. The door opened. Brennan stood in the doorway and Carol saw the cracks in his mask immediately. His face was flushed. His smile was forced, tight at the corners. His shirt was slightly untucked. Behind him, Tyler was frantically shoving papers into his backpack, his face bright red, his eyes wet with tears he was desperately trying to hide. Carol's eyes went to the laptop on the desk. The screen was dark now. Recently closed. Tyler. Carol spoke directly to the boy, her voice firm but gentle. Sweetie, come here. Come stand behind me right now. Tyler looked at Brennan, uncertainty written all over his young face. He'd been trained, Carol realized with sickening clarity. Trained to look to Brennan for permission, for guidance, for approval. Brennan stepped forward slightly. Tyler, grab your stuff. Your mom's probably waiting outside. You know how she worries. Tyler. Carol said it louder this time, more insistent. Come here. Now. And Tyler moved. He slipped past Brennan quickly, positioning himself behind Carol like she was a shield. She could feel him shaking. This 13-year-old boy was trembling so hard she could feel it in the air between them. Brennan's smile dropped like a mask falling off a wall. Irritation crept into his voice, cold and sharp. Carol, this is completely inappropriate. I was helping Tyler with his homework. You're embarrassing him in front of his teacher. This is going to make things very awkward. I saw you. Carol cut him off. Through that window. I saw everything. The change in Brennan's face was instantaneous and chilling. The warmth drained out of his eyes. They went flat, cold, calculating. This was the real Brennan Cushing. This was the thing that had been hiding underneath the smile. You saw a teacher helping a struggling student. His voice was measured now, controlled. That's what you saw. A mentor working one-on-one with a kid who needs extra support. I saw you lock the door. Carol's voice was rising despite her efforts to control it. I saw where your hands were. I saw his face, Brennan. I saw the fear in his face. Brennan's voice hardened into something ugly. You're being hysterical. This is about Sloane manipulating you, isn't it? She's jealous of our relationship, Carol. She's acting out because she doesn't want to share her mother. Children lie. You know they lie. They make things up for attention. My daughter doesn't lie. Carol was shouting now, all pretense of control gone. My daughter tried to warn me about you. She tried to tell me what you are. He knew. She knew exactly what you are. And then Carol heard it. The most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens in the distance, getting louder with every second. Brennan heard them too. His face twisted and he lunged toward the laptop on the desk. Carol stepped directly in front of him. Don't even think about it. The desperation poured out of him now, the mask completely shattered. Carol, please. Let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. You're misunderstanding the situation. Tyler and I we have a special bond, And then Tyler spoke. His voice was small and broken behind Carol, but every word was clear. He told me if I said anything no one would believe me. He said everyone loves him. He said I'd be the one who got in trouble. The sirens were right outside now, painting the basement walls red and blue through that window Carol had been looking through just minutes before. If this story is making your heart race and opening your eyes to something you need to hear, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next proves why we can never, ever stop listening to our children. The police flooded the house like a wave. Uniforms everywhere. Detectives with badges clipped to their belts. Forensics teams with their cameras and evidence bags. The quiet suburban house on Elmwood Drive transformed into a crime scene in seconds. Carol and Tyler were separated immediately, taken to different rooms for statements. Standard procedure, they told her. Through a window, Carol watched as Brennan was led out of his house in handcuffs, still protesting his innocence, still insisting this was all a misunderstanding, still playing the role of the wrongly accused good man. Their eyes met for just a second as they led him to the police car. His eyes were full of rage, pure, undiluted hatred directed at the woman who had ruined everything. Carol's eyes held nothing but disgust. She didn't look away. She wanted him to see that she wasn't afraid anymore. Detective Melissa Carlisle, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, sat across from Carol in the living room. Carol explained everything. Sloane's warnings that she'd dismissed. The Iowa newspaper article she'd found. The deleted text messages her daughter had mentioned. What she'd witnessed through that basement window. Detective Carlisle took notes, her expression growing darker with every detail. We're seizing his laptop and phone. Based on what Tyler told us in his statement and what you witnessed, we'll have enough for a warrant for his school computer too. His phone records, his social media, everything. 1 week later, Detective Carlisle called Carol. Her voice was heavy with a weight that Carol recognized immediately. We found chat logs going back 3 years. Images. Videos. Evidence of grooming at least 7 students, 3 of whom he had physical contact with. Carol, there's a lot here. More than we initially thought. Carol felt sick. She gripped the phone tighter, her voice barely working. Tyler? How bad was it with Tyler? Tyler says tonight was the first time Brennan touched him inappropriately. He'd been grooming him for weeks. Private tutoring sessions, special attention, building trust. But the physical abuse hadn't started yet. Detective Carlisle paused. Your daughter's warning and your action likely saved that boy from something much worse. You stopped it before it really began. But there were others. 3 others who hadn't been as lucky. 3 children whose lives had been forever changed by a man everyone trusted. 2 weeks later, 4 more families came forward. 4 more children who had been too scared to speak up, too convinced that no one would believe them over the beloved Mr. Cushing. 1 parent, a father with red-rimmed eyes and hands that wouldn't stop shaking, approached Carol at the courthouse. He grabbed her hand and held it tight, tears streaming down his face. My son told us 2 years ago. He told us Brennan made him uncomfortable, that something felt wrong. And we didn't believe him. We thought he was making it up because he got a bad grade in social studies. We sent him back to that man's classroom every day for another year. His voice broke. I'll never forgive myself. Never. But I wanted to thank you for doing what I didn't. For believing. Carol drove home that afternoon in a daze. The case was building. Brennan would go to prison. Justice would be served. But 7 children had been hurt. 7 families destroyed. All because everyone believed the mask instead of the children trying to pull it off. She found Sloane in her room drawing a picture with her crayons. It was a dinosaur. A big one protecting a smaller one from something in the shadows. Carol sat down beside her daughter on the floor. Sloane, I need to tell you something. Carol's voice was gentle. Mr. Brennan isn't going to be around anymore. He can't hurt you or any other kids ever again. He's going away for a very long time. Sloane looked up from her drawing, her eyes searching her mother's face. Because you believed me? The tears came then, hot and fast, streaming down Carol's face. Biz, you were so brave, baby. You tried to tell me and I should have listened sooner. I should have believed you the first time. I'm so sorry it took me so long. Sloane put down her crayon. And then she said the words that made Carol understand just how close they'd come to losing everything. He showed me pictures on his phone, Mommy. Of other kids. He said they were playing a special game. He asked if I wanted to play too. But it felt wrong. Felt really scary. So I said no and I ran away. Carol pulled her daughter into her arms and held her like she might disappear if she let go. Her 6-year-old baby had been shown images, had been propositioned, had been standing at the edge of a nightmare. But her instincts had saved her. Her gut feeling that something was wrong, that feeling adults so often dismiss as childish imagination, had been right all along. We want to believe monsters look like monsters. We want them to be obvious, ugly, cruel, easy to spot in a crowd. We want them to have warning labels tattooed on their foreheads. But they're not obvious. They're charming. They're patient. They're teachers and coaches and boyfriends and neighbors. They're the people we trust our children with. They earn that trust because that's how they hunt. My 6-year-old daughter knew something was wrong. She felt it in her bones, in that primal part of us that evolution gave us to detect danger. She tried to warn me and I almost didn't listen because I wanted so badly to believe in the fairy tale. I wanted to believe that I'd found a good man, that my daughter would have a father figure, that our lives were finally coming together. But fairy tales don't exist. And sometimes the dragon is wearing a teacher's polo shirt and coaching your kid's soccer team. 3 months later, Carol and Sloane went to the park on a Sunday afternoon. The leaves were falling again, the cycle of seasons continuing like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't been turned upside down. Sloane was laughing, playing tag with other kids, running without looking over her shoulder. She was lighter now. Healing. The nightmares had mostly stopped. She was drawing pictures of happy things again. Rainbows and puppies and dinosaurs that weren't protecting anyone because they didn't need to. Carol watched her daughter play and she felt grateful and vigilant and forever changed. She knew now that safety was an illusion. That trust was a weapon predators used against us. That the price of peace was eternal watchfulness. Brennan Cushing was sentenced to 22 years in prison. 7 victims testified at his trial. 7 children stood in that courtroom and told the truth about what he'd done to them. Their parents sat in the gallery, many of them crying, all of them carrying the weight of wishes they'd believed their children sooner. The defense tried to paint Brennan as a good man who'd made mistakes, whose actions had been misinterpreted, whose intentions had been pure. But you can't misinterpret chat logs. You can't misunderstand explicit images. You can't explain away a locked door and a terrified child. The judge, a woman named Patricia Holbrook who had been on the bench for 27 years, looked at Brennan during sentencing and said something Carol would never forget. You wore the uniform of a protector and used it to hunt. That makes you worse than a common predator. That makes you a betrayer of everything decent in this world. Carol held Sloane's hand as they walked home that evening, their silhouettes stretching long in the sunset. Her daughter squeezed her hand 3 times, their secret code for, I love you. Mommy, Sloane said looking up at her. Other kids are safe now, right? Because you stopped him. Yes, baby. Other kids are safe. Good. That's really good. And Carol realized that's what it came down to. Not the justice system, not the prison sentence, not the headlines that would fade in a week. What mattered was that children were safe. What mattered was that she'd listened even though it took her too long. What mattered was that Tyler hadn't suffered more than he had. What mattered was that 7 families finally got to speak their truth. Evil doesn't announce itself with a clap of thunder and a flash of lightning. It doesn't wear a villain's costume. It shows up at your door with a bottle of wine and a warm smile. It offers to help with homework. It volunteers for every school event. It makes itself indispensable so that when someone finally notices something's wrong, everyone else rushes to its defense. But children know. Somewhere deep in their bones, in that ancient part of the brain that kept our ancestors alive, children know when something is wrong. They feel it even when they can't explain it. They sense danger even when they don't have the vocabulary to describe it. Here's what I need you to answer honestly. Have you ever dismissed a child's concerns about an adult because that adult seemed trustworthy to you? Think about it. And tell me in the comments, because this conversation might save a life. Listen to your children. Believe them when they tell you something feels wrong, even if it sounds crazy, even if it inconveniences you, even if it means questioning someone you trust. Predators rely on our disbelief. They count on us choosing the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth. Trust your instincts, but more importantly, trust theirs. Because evil doesn't announce itself. But children know. Always listen to them.